Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today we're going to be talking about Week 3 IDP recap, as well as our Week 4 prediction, our IDP Pro Tip of the Week. Here with us today is Adam StickyZ Zekas from DLF. Adam, thanks so much for joining the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Happy to be here. Happy to talk some IDP. It's been a good IDP season so far. A lot of big players and plays and stuff, so it's been a good time. So happy to be here. Thanks again.
Hike!
So starting off with the studs, Adam, we'll ask you first. Who was your stud from Week 3?
Yeah, I mean, a player I loved coming into the draft, and somebody I pretty much drafted on every single team I could. That's gonna be Brian Branch of the Lions. Got his chance to play. They were taking it a little bit slow with him. I think his snap share was not great. But the injury to Gardner Johnson gave him a little bit more playing time, which makes sense. They added a free agent who is looking for a team. I'm wearing an Eagles hat, so I have my reservations about Gardner Johnson, but he was playing well for them. But Brian Branch gets to come in, and this week had 11 solo tackles, 3 tackles for a loss, which is from a safety is pretty good. They were using him in a lot of different ways, so absolutely blew up this week. I love to see his. I was watching some of the film before I came on here with you guys, and just his play recognition is what stood out to me the most. He just knew exactly what the Falcons were going to throw at them, and he was able to kind of diagnose and get up to make crazy good tackles. I mean, 3 tackles for a loss from the safety is very good.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because, I remember just kind of going through the scouting process of Ryan Branch. And even when you watch the NFL draft itself, they had talked about how he was a very cerebral player, if I remember, and that Nick Saban, really coached him up and he really knew his X's and O's, which really shows based on what you're saying. I do think you're right. I think he benefited greatly, obviously, with CJ Gardner-Johnson, I think most likely being out for the year, I believe, or he's going to be gone for a very, very long time. He's on injured reserve. Mm-hmm. But Branch, see, the thing with him was I didn't know if he was going to be good. I actually ranked him a little bit lower because I thought he's going to be a nickel corner. Mm-hmm. And anytime you're in nickel corner, it's like, if they're not a nickel base defense, mm-hmm. right? Is he always going to be on the field, number one? And number two, as a result, usually if they're nickel corner, I found they typically don't perform all that well. So as a result, I kind of faded from him. But man, he has looked really good the first 3 weeks of the season. I mean, you're right. I mean, he's probably the defensive rookie of the year right now, right, Joe?
Yeah, I would think at this point. I mean, he had the pick 6 right in week 1 against the Chiefs as well. So yeah, I agree with you, Steve. I think Brian Branch, I liked him. Like this college film, but then we just kind of get nervous with these tweener guys like the nickel corner. Are they a safety and how they're going to be utilizing the NFL, and do they go to the right place and right system?
Yeah, I think too. Like we talked about the Gardner Johnson injury, but I think that gave him the opportunity to play like a little bit more of that enforcer role, play more of like a sort of like a linebacker in a traditional kind of setup, and because that's kind of what Gardner Johnson does, playing closer to the line of scrimmage. Playing a little bit just more than like a sort of like a free safety. I think that's been like obviously the difference in this past week, and clearly it's going to continue. What happens in the future, it's hard to say going forward to next year and stuff like that. It's only in week 3, but so far he looked pretty phenomenal. I'm pretty happy about that.
I will say I'm very surprised. I thought Jack Campbell would be the better IDP rookie under the Lions than Branch. But they really haven't used Campbell all that much. They've only been rotating him. It really hasn't made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a slower start there. I feel like sometimes defenders, they either just on the field right away as rookies, or it takes a little while for them to get it. Because at least for me, I kind of notice, obviously you don't have a choice, right? They want to get Brian Branch comes from Alabama, so he's more pro ready. But they don't really have, sometimes you don't have a choice. You got to put these guys out there. But the thing about defense versus offense is like, okay, a wide receiver, regular receiver runs a route. Maybe it's the wrong route, but the quarterback wasn't even looking his way anyway. But you can't have that on defense, right? I mean, if a linebacker messes up his assignment, I mean that's a huge play, right? So I think the rookies tend to come on a little bit slower. When they do start fast, that's the guys that are gonna either turn their value really quickly or kind of give you a stud for the future.
So my stud for week 3 is going to be Myles Garrett. He had 5 tackles, 3.5 sacks, forced a fumble, and had 1 stuff. And just watching the Browns-Titans game, he definitely stood out. He really dominated Titans offensive line and just created havoc in the backfield, all game. He had a pass rush grade of 93.8, and then he also won and created pressure on a third of his pass rush snaps on Sunday.
Yeah, when you watch that game, Andre Dillard didn't stand a chance. He got absolutely steamrolled time and time again. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe Zadarius Smith didn't play the whole game. I think he went down a little bit, wasn't always out there. So that's his running mate right there. I mean, it's really those two. He doesn't really have, to my knowledge. Actually, they have Okoronkwo. He's okay. But nothing like Zadarius Smith. So for him to continue to do that, they could have. I actually don't know why the Titans didn't have Derrick Henry more on that other side to be able to block, protect it.
Well, you saw the one play where they Myles Garrett was going side to side, and two tight ends were just following him from the Titans all along. And then I think they got like a delayed game off that or something like that.
Yeah, it did. It definitely didn't help them, even with that helping them out. But I mean, Garrett, I think at least value wise, Garrett kind of went from being the main defensive end, I guess, in sort of DE required stuff where he was the guy. But it's kind of fallen down a little bit, especially with the way that the positions are kind of shaken out into true position and dual designation. Well, he doesn't really get that dual designation love anymore. Guys like TJ Watt, Michael Parsons are going to go over him. But there was a time when he was the clear-cut best defensive player, not named Aaron Donald, in the league. And I love to see that those guys that have kind of fallen down to like DE6, DE8, when you're like, this is a value because this guy's still phenomenal. And those edge rushers, they can last so much longer than other positions if they're very good. And I think he's someone that can do that. So being I don't know, what is year 5 or 6 for him, doesn't really matter much. And yeah, I love to see it. Super dominant. I think he was a little banged up last year. I think that kind of led to some of his lack of stats, but I'm here for it. Absolutely.
So my stud from week 3 was defensive tackle Ed Oliver. Oliver signed a contract extension with the Buffalo Bills, which to me as a Bills fan was very surprising considering he was a top 10 pick and he really hasn't performed the caliber of being a top 10 pick. Now he did play the Commanders, and Sam Howell's on a record pace for allowing sacks, but Oliver had 1.5 sacks, 4 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and 2 QB hits. But I've watched, all the Bills games, and I will say that he has been a disruptor this year. This may be his breakout year. The one thing that goes against Oliver is the Bills do rotate their defensive linemen, but this defensive line is one of the most talented in the league, and it doesn't even have Von Miller yet. And so just seeing his tenacity, I think that it wouldn't surprise me if he's able to get over 10 sacks this season.
I love I love giving love to the big man up front. Always coming out of Houston. I mean, just absolutely, he's one of the first players who kind of did that sit out year and kind of just took a lot of heat for it because nobody else was doing that at the time, but always had that explosion that just didn't exist on the field other than him in college. And he dealt with some injuries too coming in the league. I don't know if he had ACL or he had something long-term. I don't know, it was a torn pec or something like that, but he missed a whole year for the most part. And just to have that explosion back is great. Just those players with the get off. You can't teach that, that's something that just comes straight up from athletic ability. You can teach up their hands and teach up the footwork and the pass rush plan and all that stuff. But those guys with the speed off the snap are just incredible.
Yeah, I mean, you called it before, Steve. You were looking for the Ed Oliver breakout this year, and so far he's looked pretty good and definitely on his way.
Well, we know defensive tackles take a little bit longer to develop, so I'm not surprised that we're starting to see this out of him. And what I've seen is a relentless motor. I mean, he has continued to just seek the quarterback, even because you just got to keep going, you can't just check out. He hasn't been doing that. So add Von Miller into this defense. This defensive line is he's got a lot of a great supporting cast around him, I should say. So are you enjoying this video so far? Well, if you are, show your support to our new channel by hitting the subscribe button and liking this video. We'll be creating videos all NFL season long, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store. So heading over to the duds. Adam, who do you got for your dud?
This is tough. I try not to be negative on people too much because we're here for fun. But you got to pick somebody, right? I went with Alex Highsmith, and obviously, I think last week he had the pick six, or it was fumble for six, or I think it was a pick six, right?
Pick
I remember
six,
it was a stupid score, but that doesn't happen too often from the edge guys. But to go from that and having a really really good game last week, he had a sack, a couple solo tackles, a tackle for a loss. Of course, he had the interception and a forced fumble. To go from that to absolutely zero, with he only played like 12 less snaps. To go from that to absolutely zero is bad. That's for sure. That's definitely a dud. I think it definitely shows that the offense was paying him a lot of attention because the rest of the team were the rest of the pass rushers were each able to pick up a sack. He had two. I think he had one QB hit. Or it was absolutely nothing. Yeah, he had absolutely nothing. Oh no, he had two QB hits. So he was getting in there, just didn't turn those into sacks. And that's the way it goes sometimes. Those edge guys, you get the pressures, but you got to convert them to get the points. But that's really the only done. I think people were really excited for another big week from him. Touchdowns are extremely fluky, but the other stuff was looking good for him. And to be across from TJ Watt is pretty much as best as you can hope for in the NFL these days. So that was my dud. I mean, you were happy to start him. You probably were starting him already. But he's kind of an underrated guy. I feel like he just doesn't have that name cachet that a lot of the other players get. You got put on the radar with a huge game last week, but wasn't able to double up on it for this week.
And Joe, I believe he was your stud from last week.
He certainly was, Steve. And to your point, I just think people just don't realize it, and he gets overshadowed because he does have TJ Watt on the other side. But definitely was surprising. But Jimmy G does get rid of the ball fast, and I think that definitely has a factor on that. And of course, TJ Watt's going to get a sack on him.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it just goes to show you how dominant TJ Watt is. I mean, TJ Watt, he is. I actually don't think he gets enough credit. I mean, I think he's been actually overlooked many times where I think he actually deserved the Defensive Player of the Year, and I think they gave it to Aaron Donald, I think, a few times. But he when you watch him, I don't know if there is a player other than maybe Micah Parsons right now that truly impacts the game like he does on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, Alex Highsmith is a beneficiary of that. But you're right, Joe. I think there's a recipe for disaster for him with Jimmy G just being a quick thrower. He's one of those guys that if I had him, I probably am starting him every week. But that's a tough blow. But that's what edge rushers are. They're feast or famine. Sometimes they're going to get you 3 sacks and a forced fumble and all that stuff. They're going to get you a ton of points, and then next week they're going to do nothing.
I think that's too kind of speaks to like pressure rate, and he had a pretty good pressure rate last year and was able to convert those into sacks. So if you're able to keep the pressures up and not just be kind of fluky and kind of not need to regress a little bit, then you can. That's the good players, the guys that maybe they're not always turning it into sacks, but if you're able to keep up the pressures, then the sacks will eventually come your way. Hopefully that goes his way.
Yeah, for sure. So my dud of the week here is Cam Jordan, and he's another guy that most likely, if you started him, got you a goose, because I don't know if a lot of people give points for hurries or not, but he had no tackles, but he did have 3 hurries on Sunday. He did, and he still had a high snap count at 86%, so it's not like he wasn't on the field. And I just was surprised because generally Cam Jordan, if he's not going to get a sack for you, he usually has a decent floor because he usually gets a decent amount of tackles in there. So for him to have, nothing was a surprise this week.
Do you think this was a blip on the radar, Joe, or is this a sign of regression? He is getting up there in age.
Yeah, I think it's just probably a blip on the radar and just one of those games. I don't think the Packers really ran it a ton for getting tackles with the running back there, but that's what I mean. He's usually good for 3-4 tackles if he doesn't get a sack, but for him to just not get anything, I mean, it's not like I've seen it through the other weeks. So for now, I'll treat it as a blip on the radar.
With Granderson in there, kind of coming on a little bit. I think it's been a while since he's had someone quite decent next to him, and not saying, Granderson's taken a little while to come into his own. I'm interested to see kind of how that snap share goes. He's still leading the team from that position in snaps. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. They haven't really worked in Tryon really at all. He had a good start to the year, or Peyton Turner really. But some of the it is. I mean, age is a concern. I got a big 0 from him in the league. And usually he's a very happy start for me.
Right.
Just because he's hard to sit, right? If you start 4 or 5 guys, 3 to 4 or 4 or 4, he's tough to sit. But yeah, I got the 0 there too.
Yeah, he's been a model of consistency. Cam Jordan's been. I mean, he's been one of the better edge rushers for the past probably decade. I think he's probably played that long. He's definitely getting up there in age. I did see though that I want to say that he's had like 12 hurries on the year. I want to say like he's in like the top like 5, top 10 as far as hurries go. So that is telling you that he's around the quarterback. He's making plays. It's one of those things. Just he's not getting the sack, but he's getting that close to get the sack. So I think it'll come. But I'm with you. I think it's a blip.
Yeah. I mean, even in this game, I mean, he didn't record a tackle, but he did have 3 hurries. So I mean, if you were in a league that would get you points for that, he wouldn't give you the goose.
So my dud from week 3 was safety Harrison Smith. Harrison Smith is 34. He's closer to 35. I think he's finally reached the regression point. Outside his coverage grade, his run defense, pass rush, and tackling are all career lows, according to Pro Football Focus. Harrison Smith has had a total of 14 tackles on the entire season. And last game, he had 4 tackles with a forced fumble. Cameron Bynum has really been the guy who's really taken a leap forward in that secondary. Harrison Smith has been one of the better safeties, probably for the past decade. He's been playing for a very long time. But I think he finally has hit the wall. And I don't really know if you could start him going forward. Maybe that's bold on my take. I don't know if you guys would agree, but I'm almost thinking I'm benching this guy.
Yeah, I mean, I feel he did have that one. I think it was like maybe a 1 or 2 year stretch where he just wasn't as dominant, then came back. So he kind of got that burst of life back. They're playing a lot of 3 safety looks. They're getting a lot of guys on the field. Maybe it's a role situation, where he's playing at. Again, like when you have the experience, maybe a little more experienced guy. I mean, a lot of times you put them as the deep man because at least they know how to not let people get past them. Where I think some of the younger guys will kind of creep up a little bit. But yeah, I agree. It's tough because there are so few safeties that are reliable week to week, and guys like Jeremy Chin are like not what we all want them to be. But I think I want to I feel like I want to agree with you. I feel like maybe it is time to kind of say goodbye a little bit, at least from an IDP perspective. There's other better starts out there, and just a little bit more opportunities.
Yeah, it's disappointing to hear. I got him in a couple of different leagues, but I've definitely been disappointed with him thus far. In the Dynasty League, Steve, I don't know if I really have any better options to start him instead, but
really? Okay.
I think I got him in the RSO League, and I'm definitely considering not playing him.
So you don't even have someone in your reserves that you could replace from at this point?
Not really. My safety position's tough in the Dynasty League.
I will say, I mean, he's playing a lot, right? He's playing 95+% of snaps. I mean, at the end of the day, snaps are what's going to get you points. But if his role is not to kind of be the first man of the ball, then that's good. That's not good. But it also just kind of see where that team leads to. If they start kind of continuing, that's a bit of a slide. He may get some more opportunities kind of coming downhill on some good run plays. But yeah, it's tough to say goodbye to some great players. Someone like that, I mean, 34, right? I mean, he's been so good. And even when I started playing, he was like one of the preeminent safeties, at least from the IDP perspective. So yeah, very nice.
The only other wrinkle with this is the Vikings are 0-3. And if the Viking season starts to get unraveled, I don't believe they've played Lewis Seen that much. I know he was injured out for the year last year. I forgot. It was something to do with his shoulder or arm or something of that nature. Just wonder if they're going to start more younger guys, if they're going to, know that because Harrison Smith is older, they're going to transition over to the next, kind of pass the baton, if you will.
That would be great. I have a lot of him. I love his game. He's I think Maryland. If I had to squint,
Alabama, Lucien.
He's okay. He's Alabama. But I mean, sort of one of those guys that's like more free safety ish or more strong safety ish, and I just want all those hitters. Guys that are big hitters and coming downhill and stuff. That I just love those players. So I would love that. It's kind of a bummer if you're not getting opportunities. But again, it is Harrison Smith, right? So maybe there's a method to it, but yeah, I'm with you on the dud for this week.
So going over to week 4, what is your guys' prediction? You're going to give your IDP Pro tip of the week.
I mean, mine's not too crazy. I'm wearing an Eagles hat right now. Eagles get to go to the Commanders. I think they have the highest sack rate they've given up. They're 2% more than anybody else. I think the numbers are just mind-boggling how many sacks they're giving up. And they get to go and face one of the better defensive lines and linebacker group from at least from a pressure perspective on next week. So obviously it's hard to say which guy on the Eagles defensive line is going to be the one to kind of reel in the stats. And I think that's just going to continue for the rest of the year. But I feel like Nicholas Morrow, it has really good opportunities to kind of be added as another pressure piece to the plays. And I think that's going to be an opportunity for, maybe a must start opportunity for Morrow. If you've kind of been unsure, he's had put up some good stats. I think we ended up recording a sack on Monday night, but that's probably the big beneficiary. That's not, who is going to be Jalen Carter, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, Hassan Reddick, which of these guys, Josh Sweat, which one's going to be is not fun. So I think Morrow gives a little bit of a different position look at it. Because they've given so much attention to Jalen Carter and some of these other guys that you're able to get either a free rusher or somebody on just an easy one-on-one. And Morrow has looked very fast. And that definitely helps when you're trying to get to the quarterback in a hurry. So I think that's my big takeaway. This is kind of an easy one. They're giving up the most sacks, and they're a really good sack defense. But I'll take a layup when I can.
So since we have our resident Eagles fan here, and this is your week 1 dud, Joe, if we remember this, but Hassan Reddick has been really bad this year. As far as stats wise, I don't, he has not produced from an IDP standpoint. Obviously, he had his breakout. Well, he's been good for a while, but he had a really phenomenal year last year with the Eagles. I believe he had a hand surgery or some type of surgery heading into it. What's your thoughts there? I mean, you think Reddick finally, I know you mentioned Morrow, you think Reddick finally gets on the board? You think something's wrong with him? As our Eagles fan here, what are you thinking there?
Oh, it's a tough one. He's so big and he has such a unique pass rush stance. He jumps off the film, I guess, or when you're watching the game, when he's in. I think some of the guys, they kind of get, oh, is that Joshua? Is that whatever? But they play such a rotation that I feel like, maybe he's contributing in other ways. This might be the one that he gets on there. I think he has a kind of a history with against the Commanders as well. So this could be the one. It's just so tough when so many of their players on that line are seeing, degraded snaps. No one's really over 70% in snaps. Josh Sweat's 70.81. So really nobody else is over 70% in snaps. They're all just kind of bunched up. And it's working for the team. They keep everybody super fresh going into the second half of the game, and it's great. Just from a stats perspective, from an IDP perspective, it's a little worrying just because they're not putting up crazy big numbers, but they're definitely impacting every single play. And you can see that the time to throw has to be less than 2 seconds. Otherwise, you're in trouble. And teams are adjusting to that. I think we saw Baker, his average was 1.9 seconds because it's just you don't have a choice. And when you do, that's when you make mistakes. So I love it as an Eagles fan, but as an IDP thing, and Hassan Reddick is a great dual designation player. I think he had 16.5 sacks last year, tied for the lead, and depending on which if a half counts as a full or however that gets split up. But yeah, I don't know if he's going to make it that far. I could see him being the 8 range, which is probably a bit more normal for for if everybody's doing well. We'll see if he can kind of get up above 10, but I would say he's probably in the 8 range on the year.
Yeah, I'm just surprised. I thought he might be in to get some sacks. I mean, the way they're getting the push in the interior, that usually means that, the interior usually helps the edge rushers get to sack, but maybe they're just getting to the quarterback too fast. I mean, Jalen Carter's been an absolute monster and just absolutely criminal that the other teams in the NFL let the Eagles take him.
Unfair for sure. Nolan Smith got in there too. This last game and near the end of the game, messed Baker up a couple times. Yeah, it's it's not a bad time. It's not a bad time.
Yeah. But all right. So my pro tip of the week here, I'm looking at the Bengals pass rushers. I'm gonna pick on the Titans once again here. The Bengals were able to sack Stafford 6 times last week. Look for them to build off of that, and they get to face the offensive line of the Tennessee Titans, who just gave up 5 sacks to the Browns.
If you had to pick one, is there one that stands out to you? Sam Hubbard, Trey Hendrickson.
I was going to say, I think I'd take a shot with Hendrickson. I saw he was in there quite a bit, on Monday night. But honestly, you probably can't go wrong with him or Hubbard.
Man, that's a tough one. They're coming on strong. I think last year was kind of maybe a down year. I think people were expecting a little bit more from them last year. So it's nice for them to kind of get that going already. I like Hendricks. Hendrickson going in this year. Going forward, he's looking really, really good. I think Hubbard gets a lot of the attention too. So it's nice to have 2 guys that you can kind of ping pong off of. But I'm liking Hendrickson this year.
Talk about 2 pass rushers that are so vanilla that people don't know who they are, but they actually are consistently pretty good. Hubbard is like the epitome of that. He's actually been a pretty good pass rusher, I believe, coming out of Ohio State. But he's just the guy that people don't know. Other than maybe they remember him, taking that fumble return in the playoff game against the Ravens and bringing it to the house, maybe, or that he likes Harambe or he played for Harambe that game. So.
Well, actually, I actually lived like 25 minutes from FAU, and that's where he went to college. And he blew up the Senior Bowl. So I always have like a soft spot for him, for Hendrickson, because he's somebody that I've heard of before. Came from a smaller school. Florida Atlantic is a very small school, at least before they not Lane Kiffin. They had somebody for a little while. Maybe it was Lane Kiffin. But as a coach. But yeah, so I always have a soft spot for him. And just those guys are just like, I'm really good at technique. I'm going to outwork everybody. I don't have a choice. I don't have that crazy athletic gift that all the other players have. So I need to just work super hard. And you said it, just very underrated.
So my IDP Pro tip of the week for week 4 is to start defensive end Uchenna Nwosu. The New York Giants offensive line has been brutal this season with injuries to multiple offensive linemen, including Andrew Thomas. Pro Football Focus ranks them as the 2nd worst pass blocking team. Saquon Barkley is day-to-day, and I suspect he will not play on Monday Night Football, which means the Giants are going to have to throw quite a bit. I think Uchenna Nwosu will record a sack. I think he's going to have quite a productive day. He had a breakout season last year with 10 sacks. Hasn't gotten a sack yet. I think it changes on Monday night.
Yeah, I like that shot for Uchenna Nwosu. The Giants have been absolutely tragic. The Seahawks don't really have a preeminent pass rusher that they can really gotten to rely on yet. That hasn't really been their game. He's playing the most of anybody from that kind of from the defensive line. And his next closest competition is Draymond Jones. So he's definitely going to be out there a lot. And Giants have just been absolutely terrible. I was hoping, they throw the ball more, and maybe that kind of leads to a little bit of less kind of sack opportunity. But that's a good one there. I mean, anytime you can target the Giants this year, it seems like it's a good time.
Yeah, definitely. I think what was the dud of the week last week, Steve? Uchenna Nwosu. So interesting call out here, but if he's not going to be able to get a sack against this Giants offensive line, I'd be concerned about him going forward here.
Yeah, he was a dud. I believe Adam mentioned that he was a dud, and rightfully so. I mean, he has been a dud this season. He hasn't gotten a sack, and the concern is that last year was an anomaly, right? Like this is not something that he can repeat. And if he doesn't get a sack, I'm with you, Joe. I mean, if you have him, I don't know. I don't know if you could start him. I don't know. It might be. You have to figure out what you're going to do.
Yeah, he's somebody who like always been okay. This is his year. Okay, he's going to be this. He's going to be that. You know. Oh, did you guys know about Mosu? Like he's going to thing, but he just hasn't. I just don't think he's in that level. Like he's not at that tier. So I think this 9.5 sacks last year maybe be the outlier to kind of his game. He just doesn't. He's just kind of run of the mill. I think for a pass rusher. Gives you the dual designation if you happen to be on sleeper. That's awesome. But I don't know about his overall ability.
Yeah, I'll definitely be excited to watch him on Monday night. That's for sure.
Yeah, I like the call out though, Steve. I mean, Evan Neal at right tackle for the Giants has been a turnstile over there. So I like him to get the sack. I like your call out there.
I mean, it gives you something to watch for. You don't have to actually watch the Giants offense. You can watch some defensive play.
Yeah, focus on number 10.
And that's why you should play IDP. And that does it for our Week 3 IDP recap and our Week 4 predictions. StickyZ, thanks so much for coming on the show today. Where can others find your great work?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on Twitter at AdamTZ, right for DLF. I do a cool service called Rate My League. If you're interested in a personalized podcast for your league, we talk about your draft and all the teams and talk a little bit of mess, but not too much. But yeah, you can check that out at ratemyleague.com. That's it for me.
Awesome. And we do IDP recaps and predictions every week. We release that on Wednesday, so make sure to check that out in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time.